that looks into another angle as to what's going on here, what many see as an identity crisis the Democratic Party is facing about identity politics. Reporter Shane Goldmacher writes this: Democrats are grappling with how to stand up for diversity and defend marginalized groups that have come under assault from the White House without allowing their party to be defined or marginalized by those fights. President Trump has pushed to make DEI a dirty word, racing to unravel diversity programs across the federal government at a remarkable speed. But Democrats are struggling to marshal an effective response. They are debating publicly and privately when to push back, how to push back, and what exactly to push back on. Some are saying that almost no instances of discrimination, especially rank racism, should go unanswered. Others are pressing the party to be more selective and engage only in cultural battles that are winnable. And still others are urging the party to avoid identity politics altogether, even when Republicans seem to be opening themselves up to a fierce counterattack.
Right now, the future is not looking very good for the Democrat Party. Now, you all remember Reverend Al Sharpton, who just a couple weeks ago was inspiring people to do a boycott of Target, of Walmart, and all the big chain stores who decided to remove the DEI program. Check this out.
Corporations came forward and said, we're going to do diversity. We're going to do this because race needs to be dealt with. And for Donald Trump to be able to cancel a commitment they made is an outright affront to the black community, brown community, LGBTQ, gay community, and women that they committed to. So that is why we will stand with those that stand with us. Costco's immediately stepped out and said that they will not back off DEI. On last Monday, Martin Luther King holiday, I announced that for 90 days we're going to research the company that we find that has made the most affront. We will call a boycott. But today we are calling a buy-in. I have bought 100 people $25 gift certificates. We're going shopping at Costco because they've stood with us. People that stand with us, we will stand with them. People that do not stand with us, let Donald Trump stop us in 90 days from boycotting them. We will not pay to be rejected and disrespected. Thank you.
Now, what you may or may not know is that during that boycott, that short-lived boycott where they gave out the gift cards, did you know that not one person bought anything? As a matter of fact, they were trying to force people to go back into the store to spend money with the gift cards they gave them because nobody bought anything. And so now that they realize that that grift isn't working, okay, DEI has been terrible for the American people, and he's forced to admit it, not because he wanted to, but because he has to, because the Democrat Party has their lowest favorability in the history of the party. So let's listen to what Reverend Al has to say about DEI and its impact on the Democratic Party.
To you, Rev, is where do you stand on this? Some say some of these fights are for another day as we're in complete crisis.
I think that what the Democratic Party has to do and the leadership of the party is a stand for something and not try to be all things to all people. And when I read the article, I think that's the debate. Either you're going to say that we are for diversity, and diversity meaning blacks and women and LGBTQ and disabled. Don't let them interpret what it is, that we stand for that. We stand for good policing, but we don't stand for defund the police. You have to have enough nerve and enough backbone to say, define who you are and why you are, rather than be defined by your enemies. And I think that too often the Democrats have allowed their opposition to define them, and they accept the definition. So they are defined as extremists, and you're all about defund the police, and you're all about anarchy, and they become defensive rather than they set the tone. You're dealing with a president that has saluted the worst division in this country, that said it was fine people that were saying Jews will not replace us, that's now talking about, while we are talking about by excluding and deporting people to Mexico, saying that whites are being oppressed in South Africa and they're welcome to be refugees here. Why aren't the Democrats exploiting? Here's a man saying whites are being oppressed, bring them in. We have room for them. We have room for Canada, room for Greenland, but Mexicans and Haitians go out. Democrats need to be dancing all over that. Otherwise, they're going to end up like Patrick Mahomes going home without the win.
I want
to dissect what Reverend Al had to say there, because he said a whole lot of nothing. Number one, he brought up the defund the police and say what the Democrats stand for with defund the police. We remember what the defund the police movement was. We remember the Summer of Love in Seattle, Portland, and in Minneapolis, where they burned down police stations. They took over courthouses. They literally unalived police officers, and regular people lost their lives. They burned down black, brown, white businesses that were servicing the community. And now all of a sudden, that's why the whole J6 thing is just hilarious, because now they're so concerned about police being hurt. And I stand behind the men and women in the blue uniform, always have and I always will when they're doing right. But for these people to all of a sudden act like they're so behind the men and women in the blue, when if it was up to them, there would be no policing at all in this country. Criminals would be able to run them up. There's cashless bail. There's all of these crazy things that the Democrat Party not just instituted, that they fought for. So now Reverend Al is saying that the Democrats need to stand up and show what they represent. We know what they represent. They represent mutilization of children's body parts. They represent men and women's sports. They represent open borders. They represent putting illegal immigrants over your own American citizens. They represent wearing the Ukraine flag on the congressional and on the Senate floor. This is what the Democrat Party has represented for the last 4 years. And the American people are over it. And so the same person, Reverend Al Sharpton, that was pushing that nonsense, now is saying what the Democrat Party needs to stand up for. BS.
Just to get a little deeper on this, what Brianna Wu, a transgender woman and Democratic strategist who ran for Congress in 2018, here's what we're hearing from Brianna, who for years has been pushing for an extreme view of transgender rights. She blamed party leaders for embracing positions like around participation in girls' sports that turn off voters, and said this aided Republican efforts to roll back transgender rights more broadly. Quote, it doesn't help marginalized people to not be able to win elections. The purpose of the Democratic Party is to win elections. We don't need to be babysitting the emotional state of activists.
And I think that clearly we again allowed them to define us. I had a mentor that used to say to me, those that define you can confine you. And I think the definition, when they came out with this blitz on transgender, exaggerating the point, there was no pushback saying, no, we're not saying that. We're saying people have rights. Mm-hmm. So I think that she, in many ways, says what is true. And that is that we cannot appear reckless in where we are fighting in terms of trying to make people be forced into situations that they do not want to be forced in if we don't believe in. I believe in transgender rights, but I do not believe that should be the lead and defined by the opposition.
And if you're enjoying this video, hit that like button. I'll never ask you for a cash app. I'll never ask you for a super chat, but you hitting the like button helps spread it around. And if you aren't subscribed to the channel, subscribe. On this channel, I share political and current events and sales tips and techniques. So subscribe. And when you do, hit the notification bell and select all. That way you get notified when I upload new videos. Now, Reverend Al, not one person has given a crap about what people do in their bedroom. The gay community has been accepted for I don't know how long. Where the problem came in is when you tried to start forcing it in our children's schools. The problems came in when you started feeling like biological males should be treated like women just because they feel like it. That men, biological men, should be allowed in women's bathrooms because they feel like a female that day. So to act as if everybody's just so against transgender rights, nobody cares if a man wants to wear a dress and put on lipstick in his private time. But that's what he does. Why do I need to be a part of that? Why do my children need to be a part of that? And if that individual is delusional and feels like they're a woman when they have a mustache, a deep voice, muscles, hair all on their legs, and they want to be in that land of delusion, fine. But why do I and anybody else have to live in that land of delusion with them? Especially when successful countries, businesses, communities, they work on a populace where the more popular majority rules. And so we got a population of our society that's less than 1.5% that have been dictating policy and movements for the other 98.7% of us that live in America. All of the changes have been around catering to a demographic that does not care about the respect for minors, about the respect of parents. They don't care about anything except for their own selfish, delusional way of being. And that is over. That's over. So for Al Sharpton to act as if it's an extreme thing for people saying, whoa, this transgender thing has gone too far. When you want to start having children involved in it, you want to bring it into my home and it's on everything televised. It was even in the Olympics. And so the American people are behind this. The gay community has been accepted for a long time. It wasn't even an issue. None of this stuff became an issue until the Biden administration. Think about it. When President Trump ran in 2016, nobody was talking about transgender rights. In 2020, that wasn't a thing either. But in the last 4 years, when they started saying men could have babies and installing menstrual machines inside of boys' bathrooms, went too far. And luckily, the election, people got out, voted, and we made our choice, and we're over it.
Well, and that's exactly how Democrats were defined. If you look at the polls that came out afterwards, that's what most Americans thought Democrats cared the most for, in part because of an ad blitz. But I do want to read you this also from the article.
No, Joe, it's not because of an ad blitz. They keep trying to act like President Trump playing the commercial or the ad where Kamala Harris was talking to a transgender saying that it's going to be transgender changes, medical changes paid for by the government for inmates and for illegal immigrants. And that ad blitz and how it said Kamala Harris is for they, them, Donald Trump is for you. They act like that's what swayed everything. No, it's the avalanche of stuff that came down. They always try to minimize the successes of Trump and the movements of Trump supporters. And I'm going to quit just saying Trump supporters, common sense supporters, people that support Make America Great. Folks believe just because you align with these values that that Trump is your savior. Trump is the representative of the way many of us feel. He's the lead. And so his name is the one on the ticket. But if J.D. Vance represents these, we'll be behind him. If Byron Donalds represents these, we'll be behind him. Whoever steps up representing the values of the American people, we're going to get behind them. But we know the tricky stuff that happened in 2020 that led us into the conundrum we were in for the last 4 years. And they thought it was going to happen again, but it was too big to rig. So thank you for your support that you gave. And even if you did not support President Trump during this last election, hopefully you're paying attention and you realizing that within the month, President Trump has done more, accomplished more for the American people than Joe Biden did in the entire 4 years. Doge has already saved the country almost $1 trillion alone, just going through that one department. Imagine what's going to happen when they go through the Treasury, the Department of Defense, the Department of Education, and even more. We might be able to offset our debt just by the saving and the wasteful spending that's been going on by the Democrat Party.
From the Times article, Rev, about the split in the party and what happened even during the election for a party leader. Just how far the party is from consensus was apparent during the recent election for the next chairman of the Democratic National Committee, which devolved at times into almost a caricature of left-wing litmus tests on inclusivity. Candidates were asked to pledge to expand transgender representation, add a new Muslim caucus, and affirm that racism and misogyny contributed to Kamala Harris's defeat. Last Saturday, the departing DNC chairman, Jamie Harrison, labored to explain the party's dizzyingly complex gender parity provisions. Our rules specify that when we have a gender non-binary candidate or officer, the non-binary individual is counted as neither male nor female, and the remaining 6 officers must be gender balanced. Republicans gleefully circulated clips of the moment to portray Democrats as hopelessly obtuse. Reverend Al.
I think that what the Democrats have to be careful of is, again, being defined where we are more concerned about checking off boxes, a certain amount of this, certain amount of that. rather than being clear on what it is we stand for, and have people of all backgrounds rise up to represent that. And the fallout from that is by just saying we have to have 5% of this, 12% of that, and not what it stands for, and that these people have merit and speak for the people. The fallout is you end up with people that cannot really do what needs to be done to make the party victorious. Sure, we need diversification, but we also need people that are able and qualified to do what needs to be done. And if we make point B point A and A point B, we lose every time. And we cannot let those that can make the most noise decide the strategy. Let them yell all they want. I remember during the George Floyd fight, when many of us were leading the marches and rallying nonviolently and working with the family, there were people that said we want to burn down Minneapolis. And we said we're not with them. You have to have the nerve to not only stand up to your opposition, you have to have the nerve to stand up to the noise makers in your own side and say, wait a minute, that's not what we're about.
He didn't do a very good job, did they? Because they burned Minneapolis up. As a matter of fact, Governor Walz, Tim Walz, his wife said that she opened up the window to breathe in the smell of the city burning. And so as you see, the reason why the grifter, Al Sharpton, I don't even like calling him a reverend. The reason why the grifter, Al Sharpton, is having to do this about face, because he's losing credibility. The Democrat Party is bleeding supporters. It's not cool at all to say you're a Democrat. As a matter of fact, people look at you crazy. This is the most unpopular the Democrat Party has ever been since its creation. And that's a great thing, because look at where it's gone. So I wanted to jump in and show that everything is turning. The country is becoming more civil, more common sense already within a month. Can you imagine where we're going to be at in a year or two? Do you remember prior to President Obama being in office, how there wasn't this big race thing going on? Blacks, whites, brown, yellow was getting along great. But that's what freaked the Democrats and the powers that be like George Soros out. Because when everybody's getting along, the conversations start. And then people start realizing they have more in common than they do different. And when they realize that and say, hey, y'all been struggling? Yeah. Y'all been struggling? Yeah. So if we both struggling and I thought you had it and you thought I had it, who's really got it? And everybody starts looking in the same direction. And when they look that way, they'll realize it's gay, straight, white, black, yellow, brown, all of the different colors on the spectrum of those who have been acting like the puppet masters, manipulating us to bicker and fight over crumbs while they got the whole cake and an entire table full of food right there in front of us. But we fighting over these crumbs. Not anymore. So I'm glad to hear Reverend Al, or excuse me, Al Sharpton and Mika and Joe realize that the Democrat propaganda is over. Now, we know how they operate. They're coming back, and they're going to come back with a vengeance of trying all types of weird stuff. But see, and as President Trump has been there before, then he had 4 years to watch and analyze. And he came back in and he knew exactly where he wanted to go and what he wanted to do. He knew who the good and the bad people were. He knew exactly where to attack, how to get his team together, and how to not waste time, which is what Washington, D.C. is known for, wasting time. And the Democrat strategy, it was revealed the other day. One of the Democrats said that their strategy is to delay, obstruct. That's it. Delay and obstruct. So they want to mess up anything that could be going well and delay anything from getting started that could work good. That is treasonous. To do that to your country that you live in, to do what you can to help it fail, just so your political party doesn't look bad. Look at what Joe Biden did on his way out. It's atrocious, but luckily we got the right person in charge. So I appreciate you for watching this video. Remember to like this video, share this video. If you aren't subscribed, subscribe to the channel. I'm Brian Maxwell saying I look forward to seeing you at the top. Over and out.